even on an inside recess rainy day when first graders were chock full of energy, they would sit still and be on point the whole book through and beg for more. And in all my years of teaching, nothing worked as well as that. Nothing.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Estrin. My Grandfather's Coat won the 2015 Sidney Taylor Book Award for Younger Readers. I was lucky enough to be able to record the Mutual Appreciation Society meeting that took place among author Jim Aylesworth, illustrator Barbara McClintock, and scholastic editor Diane Hess when they came to the Association of Jewish Libraries conference to receive their award. I also recorded Jim's wonderful conference session. You'll hear highlights after the interview. So I'm here with Jim Aylesworth and Barbara McClintock, the author and illustrator of My Grandfather's Coat, and also with Diane Hess, the editor of this book at Scholastic. And this was the winner of the Sidney Taylor Book Award in the Younger Readers category for 2015. This is a story based on an old folk song, that has had actually a Sidney Taylor Gold and a Sidney Taylor Silver, two other versions of it. So let's hear about how you guys got started with creating your own version of this existing story.
Well, first you should know that this is not our first retold folktale, so it's I think number 7 that we've done together. So we were kind of used to retelling old favorite tales. It was actually Diane who wanted to choose this particular one. When she makes a suggestion like that, it makes me really nervous at first. But I do know a lot about folklore, and I know a lot about the young readers. I was for years a first grade teacher. Knowing a lot about folklore and knowing a lot about children really was helpful to me.
But why did it make you nervous?
Well, Sim Stayback, for one, who called the Cott winner. And, of course, I always want to please Diane, and sometimes, at first I'm thinking, how can I compete? How can I make a worthy version? But I always start with what I know that children like. And there's a lot of things in that story that appeal to me from that point of view. Repeated rhymes. There are animals in the story. In my version, there's kittens and mice at the end, my mouse fantasy at the end.
So I've always loved the story. I love the recycling story. I love the story of a transformation of something into other things. I just think it's a really beautiful story on so many levels. And I love that it comes from a Yiddish song. And the other two versions are really unique, and the art is so different. And I know that when I approached Jim and Barbara to collaborate together, that they're going to be the quintessential versions. They're going to have amazing text. Jim is a brilliant writer. He really understands kids and the whole interactive reading and having kids join in, and just the text is just so sublime, and Barbara's artwork is so beautiful. One of the things that she does, and there are very few artists can integrate the text and the story in the way that she does. It's magical the way she can take words and illustrate them without being literal. Her artwork really pulls the reader along with a narrative that doesn't compete with the text. And when you have like really great text and you have an artist that's a great actress, as Barbara is, her characters all have a lot of personality and a lot of spunk. If you have great text and great art and you put it together, you're going to have something amazing. So I really tend to take my favorite stories and know that they're going to create a version that's like no other one.
Yeah, and Jim's telling of this tale was really wonderful, and he's so good with patterning, and they're so rhythmic.
Repetition that invites participation, which enhances learning.
Exactly. And there's something that is so song-like about it, too, and I really love that. It just rolls off your tongue. It really is music. It's great.
We have to speak to Barbara's skill of showing and passing of time.
Well, that was the exciting challenge of this particular manuscript, because as Jim mentioned, this was our 7th book together. But this book was so unusual because in The Mitten, it just takes place over maybe a 24-hour period. The Gingerbread Man is also short and sweet. This one took place over 5 generations. So the challenge of that was keeping everybody straight so that you knew that my grandfather was my grandfather throughout the entire course of the book, even though he ages from like a 15-year-old boy to somebody who could possibly be 90.
And the granddaughter doesn't crop up until the second to the last generation. So we had to sort of carry that through and let the reader know from the beginning that who's my, and keeping the characters down to a minimum, because she was doing these wonderful big families, and then at the earlier
who were all these people, and how am I supposed to? This is like War and Peace. We have to have a flow chart of who all these people are, and we realized this was for
like
very, very little children, and so we had to keep it really simple.
A lot of only children, which
so we had to truncate the family.
Right.
It shrank from 3 children to 1 child, and then that child had 1 child, and that child had 1 child. So I guess it also espouses the single child family concept as well. So it covers a lot of bases.
Predict until it was actually on the drawing board, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. The manuscript is the skeletal structure of the book, and then when you start fleshing it out with the artwork, all of a sudden you realize that the narrative has to take certain turns that you don't see if it's just in the vocal, oral portion of the story. So all of a sudden, where is it going to be? The drawings really put it in a concrete setting and really fixes the characters so that you see who they are very clearly. And that then became the challenge, because where was the story going to take place? Jim and I both are from rural backgrounds, so I think this was something that was a comfortable fit for both of us, to think of it as being in a rural setting. Most of these tales, based on the Jewish immigrant experience, are either back in the old country,
New York or Chicago, yeah.
Exactly, in a more urban setting. So I also thought, it would be really fun to do this, to really kind of explore the rural Jewish American experience as well.
And that's something you discovered actually after you read the manuscript.
Yes.
Right.
But I was thinking about you, and I thought, your experience with is it your great-grandfather's farm?
Yes.
Yes. And
it's actually my double great-grandfather's farm.
Wow.
2 great.
Wait a minute, your great-great-grandfather's farm.
here comes the math.
Okay, so we're again a generational thing too.
Right. Yeah, it gets complicated.
Yeah. Shortly before I got the manuscript for my grandfather's coat, my partner David Johnson and I had moved to northeastern Connecticut, which is sort of the last truly rural section of Connecticut. Cows outnumber people 2 to 1. And I discovered that there was a very large Jewish population there. They had farm backgrounds, and it was sort of like, what? Jewish farmers? You're kidding. You gotta be kidding. A lot of them were sponsored by a program that was originated in the early 19th century by Baron Maurice de Hirsch, who was a German philanthropist. He had a mission to help Russian Jews escape Russia and the repression in Russia at that time. And he also had this idea of a utopian agricultural society. So his early philanthropic efforts continued on through the 1950s. And this JAS program helped refugees and immigrants come to Canada, Argentina, and the United States. There was a farm training program. Actually, that one was in New Jersey. And then once the farmers had trained to a certain point, the program helped them get mortgages to purchase farmland and equipment. And a lot of them settled in this portion of northeastern Connecticut. So it was also the southernmost point of the Borscht Belt, because in the summer, these farmers, in order to supplement their income, would rent out their farmhouses to Jews who were living on the Lower East Side. So these families would come up for the summer. The farm families would resettle like in an apartment in their barn or something. And they not only would they rent out the house, but they would charge these people who are coming up from the city money for their summer experience of working on the farm. And they charged them to use the kitchen to cook food, and of course they would sell them the food to cook. Wow. So it was like a win-win situation a good deal for the farmers.
And that's where Tom Sawyer learned his trick.
A good American tradition, I think. But they would also have entertainers who were coming through the Catskills come down to a theater in Colchester, Connecticut, and perform. So it was really an interesting little kind of sideline for Jewish American history in the Northeast. So that was kind of a cool thing. So anyway, learned a lot. I interviewed a lot of my friends, and my very good friend Ellen Graber Donahue was kind of my go-to person for information. Her son and daughter-in-law got married around the time I was working on the illustrations for the book. So they are my grandfather and his bride in the picture book.
Does she have red hair?
She has red hair. Yes, she does.
Okay. I thought maybe you switched it.
Not on that one. No, I didn't switch that. But actually, her son has blonde hair, so I fudged that with my grandfather. But it was nice because I interviewed Ellen's dad, who is 90, and her son, and Ellen also has a grandson. So I was able to see these multiple generations just in her family. And it gave me a feeling about how my grandfather would age, because I could sort of think about her grandson, her son. We kind of skip a generation there and then go, to the grandfather. So that also helped inform the illustrations as I was working on them.
That's great. And then you had also mentioned that the synagogue that's pictured in the book is a real place. So tell about that.
Yes, it is. It is located in Hebron, Connecticut. It's about the size of, I don't know, a large ping pong table. No, it's a little bigger than that. But there is room for 48 people to sit in the building at one time. And it's a very, very charming little place. And the wedding scene is based in this synagogue. And my friend Ellen and her parents are both members. And it was built in the 1940s in true barn-raising fashion. People had been meeting in kitchens of various farmhouses up until that point. And they decided that they just had to bite the bullet and they had to make a building. So everyone in the community helped them build this synagogue. So all the Gentile farmers in the area also came in big group effort. And it really spoke to that sense of community in our area of Connecticut, where everybody lives sort of out in the middle of nowhere. You have to kind of all jump in and help each other in all aspects of farming and life. And, it's a great way for me to connect to my new community, too, working on this book.
So the books that you two have collaborated on before, I don't remember any of the others being ethnic, so to speak, unless I'm remembering incorrectly. Am I right about that?
Well, I don't know. There's a whole gingerbread man culture.
Well, it depends on what you mean by ethnic.
I guess what I mean is, most of them seem to come out of the sort of British folklore background, nursery rhyme background.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The Mitten is reputedly a Ukrainian tale, so it's Eastern European.
Right. And is this the first book with Jewish content that either of you worked on?
Yes, it is. I think it's...
Not for you, because you did Mindy.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yes, when Mindy saved Hanukkah, and that was Eric Himmel was the author on that one. I went rogue. I'm sorry, Jim.
That was before Jim.
Yes, that was pre-you. So but for that one, I also did research in a synagogue, but it was the Eldridge Street Synagogue, which is a much bigger place than this little synagogue in Hebron.
Right, and this must have been Diane's influence putting you together with Eric Kimmel, right?
Yes, I was going to tell, there's such an interesting, my favorite story about the Eldridge Street Synagogue. It was a wreck when he wrote about it, he just historically found the synagogue. And when Barbara went in there to do the research, it had not been renovated yet. And she went into it. It was very torn up and dark. I think there were just little scraps of wallpaper. And she actually looked at what was there and put it together. She did sort of detective work of figuring out what it looked like. And when they did the renovation, her picture from When Mindy Saves Hanukkah was the only picture of the temple intact, and the architects actually used it.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it was. I haven't been back there since it's been renovated.
I go all the time. In fact,
Heidi's.
Didn't
Yeah, we've gone there
that book
together.
get a Sidney Taylor?
No, it did not get a Sidney Taylor award. Did it get something else? I can't remember. This is really.
I don't.
I thought
It didn't get a gold. It might have gotten some other level of honor.
Yeah.
Because it certainly is a high quality book. I'd have to look it
That
up.
was a long time ago. I can barely keep track of what I'm doing today.
So, because this is not the genre you're usually in, were you aware of the Sidney Taylor Book Award? Was this a big surprise to receive this award?
Well, it was a bit of a surprise for me, but great honor, of course.
It's always a surprise when you win an award. It's better to just let it be out there in the ether, and then if you happen to win something, it's just a happy surprise. And Diane has been very engaged in making sure that our books are seen by many organizations. And
My Grandfather's Coat was also PJ Library selection. Mm-hmm. They also had a little bit of an influence as we were working on it, because they had a session that I was invited to where they were talking about who the Jewish population is right now. And it shouldn't have come to so much of a surprise, but the Jews of today are not the same ones with the Yiddish grandmothers. So children are coming from families that are more multicultural, intermarried, religiously, racially, and there are parents who are not schooled in Judaism, or their families haven't followed tradition, and the PJ Library is trying to reconnect communities to make sure that they're not losing generations. And they did a really nice version of this where they have how recycling is a Jewish value on the jacket flaps. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was really interesting for me to sort of have that in my head as I was working with Jim and Barbara. When we were coming to making certain decisions about things of like, yes, this is a good idea, and this is America now. Mm-hmm. Taking it into the modern, the bells were ringing. Like this is the right.
Very like the grandfather himself. The story came from Eastern Europe and is now an American. It's an American story now, just like the grandfather and his family are Americans.
And there was assimilation in the book. It's transplanted on American soil and becoming.
And, folklore comes from all cultures all over the world, every single culture. And the same strategy could work with other cultures, too. A story can come from Ukraine and come to Connecticut, because Barbara said our Mitten version in rural Connecticut.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, yes.
And she used some of the stone walls on her property. Mm-hmm. How lovely that must be there. Snow-covered.
Oh, it's very pretty in the winter, yes. Yeah. It's just, it's beautiful. And I think, it's interesting because I think every book one does, an author or illustrator does, there's always a strong element of yourself in it. And you find that element of yourself in different cultures and different locations. And I think that's something that makes a story universal, because I think people find themselves in something that you do. I mean, it may not be your religion or your ethnic background or...
I think all of our retellings are American now, right? None of them were set. None of ours were set in Europe or elsewhere.
No, I don't think so. No, they were. I live in Connecticut, so I'm inherently lazy, and I look out my window and I just draw what's out there. So I think most of them came. All of them. I think Tale of.
Well, the Goldilocks is in America.
Yes.
And the Tricky Fox clearly is in America, with a little schoolhouse, American-type schoolhouse.
Yep, and R.A. Blinken.
Of course.
Is definitely an American. So it was nice to kind of make that connection with My Grandfather's Coat and this, tale and place it here. So maybe I was lazy again. I just, dealt with, who my neighbors were and what was outside my window, and I was illustrating the book too.
So an illustrator can sneak in personal details like that in an obvious way, but as the author of this book, is there any hidden things that the reader doesn't know about that are connected to you?
The story is told in the voice of the granddaughter. We've established that. But I'm the author. So her voice really comes from my life and my thoughts. And at one point in the granddaughter's telling, she describes her grandparents' meeting as the luckiest day in her grandfather's life. And that comes from my life, because my wife, that I met many years ago on my lucky day.
Aww.
And we've been married 50 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
In February, 50 years.
That's great.
And some of them were longer than normal years.
All in good ways, I'm sure.
So we get extra credit.
Well, I hear your voice, and now that I'm meeting you, this is the first time
This is
Jim
the
and I
first time you've met?
have met. We've been
In
doing
person.
but in person. We've
Right.
communicated via phone and email. But we've been doing books for 20 years, almost 20.
Well,
98.
98, but we actually started talking, a year before that, right?
Yes.
98 was the pub date. So at least 6 or 8 months before that.
Yeah. So that's what. But I can see you saying that exactly, and I can just imagine your voice in the text and meeting you. You are the kind and generous and gentle soul that I think comes through in all of your writing.
That's nice to hear.
And true.
Well, I know it's unusual for authors and illustrators to meet in person, but I guess I am surprised because you have been working together so long. Because I know Diane's a little more flexible on this than a lot of editors.
We live far apart from each other, and we've had a couple of near misses.
So anyway, I'm glad it's happening now, and for such a wonderful
real
and
important, happy
prestigious,
reason.
Occasion. I think this is really, really wonderful.
Well, is there anything that I haven't asked that any of you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to make sure, I'm sure Barbara does too, that everybody knows how grateful we are, and we're so generous of you good people to praise our book and to honor us with this gold medal thing. It's really happy, and I'm so very proud.
Yes, me too. It is such an honor.
And I know Diane is proud too.
I'm so thrilled. It's just
really
wonderful.
It's really validating because we did work hard on it.
Yeah,
we did,
and we did stress out about things at various times.
Oh, it was a complicated book. I mean, I got many calls from Diane saying, this doesn't really follow very clearly, and I think that maybe this character needs to be someone.
Some of her drawings.
Oh yes,
and start over, which is
That was very unusual.
So was it a very different book to start with?
If you take out one of the daughters, that groups up the whole.
The focal point was getting very complex, and we had to simplify it so the reader was able to follow the generations, working with generations, and the math. I mean, that was my...
Yeah, it was complicated.
We had to figure out who we knew that came from that generation. I think we decided my dad. Then it made sense that...
But, I don't remember ever saying that he had three daughters. I didn't say that.
You never said it, but I think in the early
Right, I didn't say
artwork.
Did I show him the artwork?
Yeah, because the family, they were just a bigger family, which was beautiful, and it broke all of our hearts to lose all the siblings, but it was hard to follow. And there was like a point where it had to be really clear, like this one had a baby, then this one, we had to show like the life cycles, because it got a little...
Well, they weren't wearing name tags.
No, that would have helped.
Right.
That would have helped a lot. It was just a lot of little moving pieces that had to line up correctly. But the beauty is that you don't see that in the book. When you open the book up, it just reads. It's so simple. It flows.
It looks like it was just...
And that's exactly what we wanted to do. And so sometimes it just takes a little extra tweaking and moving. And Diane is such a valuable editor because she really gets in there and works with you, and she's constantly on call, and you can go back and forth. It's just, you're so easy to work with, and it's just, so when you have to make those tough calls, Barbara, let's kill off those two characters. It's okay. You actually want to do it for her.
Sweet girls, too.
I know, they were such sweet girls. Oh, no.
Aw. Yeah, no, I mean, when you're working with such talented people, I have so much respect for their talent, and they're both really, as you can see, extremely wonderful, giving, amazing human beings.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Part.
Definitely leave that one in. Yeah.
Thank you both very much, and thank you for creating this amazing book.
Oh, well,
cool.
We're just so thrilled to have done it. It was a great project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm so very, very, very proud of this award. These are our books, and I'm the author, and Barbara is the illustrator. I'm here because of Diane and Barbara, but more exactly, I'm here because of these kids here, and hundreds of kids like them. I read so many books to the kids, and I learned to love books, love using books with them to achieve my major curricular objective of teaching the kids how to read and make school fun. And they really worked. Even on an inside recess rainy day when first graders were chock full of energy, they would sit still and be on point the whole book through and beg for more. And in all my years of teaching, nothing worked as well as that. Nothing. And without realizing it first, I was learning how to become an author because the kids would give me feedback. If something wasn't working well, you can tell. But when it was working, it's just magic. And of course, as the years went on, I repeated things that worked really well. And I paid attention to what they liked. And over time, I created a list of things that children like about books. They love sound, oh yes, they love so much, they love it. Sound, pure sound. Children are noisy. That's because they love it. They love poetry and music. They love animals. They love other children. They love children animals. Puppies and kittens. They love pretending. The kind of pretending that we call fantasy. Back to above. They love poetry and music with a lot of repetition. The kind of repetition that's happy to the ears, but also the kind of repetition that invites participation, which enhances further learning. Repetition, rhythm, rhymes, that's what children like. They love gestures, the eensy-weensy spider kinds of gestures. They love color, bright, Clifford red color. And they also love gross stuff. I do not know why they love gross stuff. And I have to say that Barbara McClintock is so good with all these, not so good at gross. She's too ladylike to put gross stuff. As far as I know, I don't notice any gross stuff in her book. No gross stuff. But I don't really love gross stuff either, except the kids love it so much I bend it a little. What's wrong with a smelly sock? It's gross. Sick. Read it again. So by and by, I got introduced to the world of folklore. And of course I discovered there were many different versions of the same story. And I began to use various versions in tandem. We would compare them together. And at first, some of the kids would say, "That's not the way it goes." And when I would hear that, I would know that I still had work to do. I would prefer it when they would say, I like that version better than that version, or I like this part better than that part. They were becoming literary and not literal. And that's why I was so open to the world of folklore. And by, Diane suggested that I try my hand at The Gingerbread Man. And that was Barbara and our first book together, thanks to Diane. And when I began the work, I said, what do kids like about this book? And I had an immediate answer, and that was the little song in there. The sassy little song. Run, run, fast as you can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. And I said, well, if they like that, I'll make up a new song so that there's two songs in the story. Two songs are bound to be better than one song. And so I created a little extra song to go in there. And when I would be working with the children, I'd often use a pointer gadget like this. I'll be the teacher, you be the children. No, no, I won't come back. I'd rather run than be your snack. No, no, I won't come back. I'd rather run than be your snack. No, no, I won't come back. I'd rather run than be your snack. Very smart children. I'm so very happy to be your teacher. Smart, smart children. Always praising, inviting the repetition, inviting the participation with the gesture. And that became a habit. This was such a fun thing for me. And Pitty Patty's Piggy, I got so much to say. Oh, not talk about that one. But I like it. One day, it was a rainy day recess. There were a lot of puddles on the playground. And I told the kids before we went out there, I said, there's a lot of puddles out there, children. I don't want anybody coming back in here wet. Make sure you don't go into the puddles.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
The classic caution. By the recess is over, and there was one kid, a little girl, came squishing in. And I said, did you go into that puddle? Nothing. Did you go into that puddle? Yes, sir. I thought I told you not to go into those puddles. Yes, sir. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? I forgot not to go in it. And that sweet phrase ended up in this book, Goldilocks. And that little girl who forgot not to do what I told her not to do became Goldilocks. And that phrase of forgetting not to do what the mother told her not to do is repeated throughout the story. One version alone is good. One version alone is good. Read two together. It makes them both better. There's dear Goldilocks, the forgetful first grader girl. Here's the tricky fox, my trickster tale. He sings a very, very sassy song. It goes like this. I'm so clever, tee-hee-hee, trick, trick, tricky. Yes, sirree, snap your fingers, slap your knee. Human folks ain't smart like me. Human folks ain't smart like me. Human folks ain't smart like me. And I would say, be sure you put a smart aleck expression on it. And you'd be surprised how easily first graders put on that smart aleck. It's like it's real natural to them. Tricky Fox learns a lesson, though. He gets tricked with his own trick. The classic folk motif. The trickster getting tricked with his own trick. Perfect revenge. And guess who does the tricking of the trickster? A teacher. And you have my permission to substitute librarian. Our book about Abraham Lincoln, using my gadget, making learning fun. I'm the teacher, you're the children. Wise Abe Lincoln said, no more to slavery, no more to slavery.
No more to slavery.
Wise Abe Lincoln said,
No more to slavery.
many brave days ago, inviting the participation, enhancing learning. That's how it goes. I love the gadget technique. When you use a gadget, you can hold the book higher. The kids can see better in the back. When you use a gadget, it pushes this shoulder back, which increases the peripheral vision. And if you're a teacher of young children, you know how important peripheral vision is. Our book about the mitten. It's a chance to use so many different happy voices, like, I'm just a little mouse. Please, please let me come in. One version alone is good. One version alone is good. Two versions used together make them both better. No kidding. I'm not kidding. We would do happy literary projects like Venn diagrams and all kinds of graphing and stuff. Made learning a lot of fun. And then you could say, okay, which one do you like better? Unfortunately, some kids say they prefer the white mitten better. This is the white mitten version. However, if the kids are really, really smart, you know they would pick the red mitten version. And Barbara's illustration of that mitten exploding with all those pieces of red yarn flying all over, that's so great. And if two is not enough, go for a third version. And compare them all. Decide. You say, which do you like better, and why do you say that? You got to have that last part in there. Why do you say that? And even young children come up with very literary answers. No kidding. And then we get to our grandfather's coat. And, the grandfather loved the coat, and he wore it, and he wore it, and little bit by little bit he frayed it and tore it, until at last he wore it out. So what did the grandfather do? He sat right down, and out of the still good cloth of his handsome coat, he stitched and he sewed. I forgot how I'm a little out of order. And he made himself
Jacket.
what kind of a jacket? No, it's a handsome coat. Smart jacket.
Smart.
And so on. And then when we get to the wedding, when I first saw the illustrations, the author doesn't see the illustrations right away. And so there's, so to speak, a certain emptiness compared to later when you see the illustration. And when I saw the illustrations, it put me immediately into that wedding scene that Fiddler on the Roof. And ever since that moment, it's been a little bit like this for me. Maybe it's just me. Or maybe it's just wishful thinking. He frayed it, he wore it, and he wore it. Sunrise, sunset. And little bit by little bit. Sunrise, sunset. He frayed it, and he tore it. Swiftly go the years, one season following another, laden with happiness and tears. You know it. How odd. Yes, that's so lovely. Barbara's work matches it in my eye. One version alone is good. One version alone is good. Two used together make them both better. And I've been using this slide. I took it out of my PowerPoint presentation. I've been using it all winter and all spring in my appearances. Without really realizing what was wrong, I noticed somehow vaguely that there was an imbalance. There was too much gold on the one side. And it certainly needed a little gold on the other side. So, what you get for wishing. Thank you very, very much.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. Leave a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can also like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast. Follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening and happy reading.